one of Oregon's, if not one of the world's leading innovators in electric-powered transportation, but with a critical difference. This isn't just about being green and kind of, eat your vegetables sort of sustainability. It's also about fun. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Craig Bramscher of Brammo Motors. He's not coasting, by the way. That's actually running, right? Right? So let's talk actually about one of the bikes.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit exactly how it works, how it differs from a regular motorcycle.
So when we came up with the original idea of trying to build an electric motorcycle, we did one of the early analysis of, well, just take the engine out and put an electric motor in and put the batteries in. And even in just kind of mocking that up, we could see it wasn't going to work. So we started with a clean sheet of paper and said, okay, if you don't have a traditional motor and gas is not something that you're going to use and you can't just fill in the gaps like you can with a gas tank, what would it be like? So our team at the time was one engineer and one designer working after hours and weekends because we were in the business of building cars at the time. And I said, let's find a way to build a motorcycle as if nothing had ever existed in the clean sheet of paper. So we found that the chassis really became a battery tray. And the other thing we realized is we have to protect the batteries. So many people hang them on the outside, and that's a bad place to put them if you're going to be sliding down the freeway.
And a lot of what really makes these bikes amazing is the efficiency, right?
Yes.
The fundamental efficiencies of them.
Yeah, one of the things that when we did the math early on, and the reason we moved from cars to motorcycles, well, there was a lot of reasons, but one of the fundamental ones was a spreadsheet that said cars are going to be about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. And a motorcycle like ours is about 15 miles per kilowatt hour. We know that batteries are the constraint. They're too big, too heavy, and too expensive. So the light bulb went off again and said, okay, we're in the motorcycle business, because if we believe electric vehicles are really what's going to change the world, this is the best place to start based on where technology is today. And this was 2004, 2005.
And in comparison to an internal combustion engine, I mean, it's notably more efficient.
The thing most people say, aren't motorcycles terribly efficient? They are compared to cars, but many of them, the fun ones, are 70 to 80 miles to the gallon. And motorcycles aren't held to the same emission standards as cars. So you end up with a little bit dirtier vehicle, and for a long time you could buy a two-stroke motorcycle, which was terrible on the emission side. But these, and the irony is there is no gallon, so how many miles per gallon? But that's the big question in the EV space today. But for us, if you base it on a $3.75 cost per gallon, you're at about 425 miles to the gallon equivalent economically. So when gas goes to $5, it goes up, and when it comes down, it goes down. But it still stays at $3 a gallon. It's 250 miles per gallon, roughly, something like that, equivalent.
So you've got several different models. Why don't you tell us a little bit about each of them?
Sure. Our first one, which this is an example of, was the Inertia. This was based on a commercially available battery. We had not yet invented our battery system. And this one went about 42 miles and is 65 miles an hour. And it's starting to sell really well in Europe. It's great for small commuter locations. And then we're replacing that with an identical bike, a few minor changes, but with a Brammo battery, and that one gets you about 80, 85 miles on a charge. This is the bike you saw in the video. This is one that this is a prototype of the one that we're bringing to market in 2012. This is called the Engage, and this is the first electric motorcycle with an integrated 6-speed gearbox. So if you're a traditional motorcycle rider, you get on this, and the only difference is the noise, and you have a little bit more torque. But there's a clutch, and there's 6 speeds, so you really know what to do on this. Several people asked me this at the back of the theater. I want to see what's inside. So if you were to take a bandsaw down the middle of our bike, that's a lot what it would look like. The one that you see here with the blue batteries, that was the first bike, which was based on the cylindrical cells, the same ones they have in a Tesla Roadster. We've now replaced those with a pouch cell that's about the size of an iPhone. This is the bike that we won the TTX GP championship. We weren't the fastest, but we were, I think, one of the most consistent. And this one is a high voltage system. And one of the things that we found with racing is that we push the limits of what we think is possible. So the new bike called the Impulse was directly a result of us going racing and realizing that we could accomplish things that we didn't think were feasible, that didn't show up on the spreadsheet.
Oops. Let's actually, let's go ahead and skip to the races, because I was curious about your competition, particularly in racing right now. I mean, you're sort of neck and neck with another Oregon designer, Michael Sizz, and then also with Motor One. And talk a little bit about the dynamics. What distinguishes you? Let's see here. Oh, there it is. There's the Moto Sizz bike. And actually, in our selection process, it was sort of neck and neck between Craig and Michael as to who we would bring. And you won this little contest. But let's talk about the contest on the racetrack.
Well, to be honest, I think he's a lot more charismatic than I am, and he's an amazing designer. You know, he and I talked a lot early on before he decided to go to electric, and we haven't really chatted since. But you know, what Michael's doing, in my opinion, is showing, you know, what's possible for the future, and what we're really trying to do is show what can I sell to customers today, what can people do today, and so we've got a very production focus. So the bike that we raced with has all the same components, suppliers, and everything that we're selling through traditional dealers.
What's the 5-year horizon look like? You've got a deal with Best Buy. You're opening a manufacturing plant in Hungary. You've got these motocross parks. Where do you imagine Bramo Motors will be in 5 years?
That's an interesting question, because I kind of have 2 answers, and part of that rolls back to, I think, what I realized with my parents, and when I was telling my wife this story before I came up here, she said, you can tell them it happens to me too, which is essentially the idea is, you know, just keep coming, and I'm so sure all of them are going to come true that I just exhaust friends and employees and my wife with that. And I think that, so I've been trying as I get older to censor some of the ideas or the vision just a little bit, because it always exceeds what's probably possible. But then when you fall a little bit short, you're still way beyond your wildest original dreams. So for Bramo, you know, I can see us being a global force in electric motorcycles and in power sports more broadly. I believe that because we've got a good head start and a phenomenal team, that we can actually be one of those companies, and I hope a lot of the companies that are starting up now become those companies when my kids, who are, you know, 12 to 5, are telling their kids, remember when they used to use gas? And they go, where? You know, in the grill? No, they actually put them into cars. When they have that conversation, you know, I'd love them to say, yeah, and my great-grandfather was one of those 10 companies that made a difference. So that's kind of what drives me for this. But I think we'll have a broad range of products. I think that the technology is going to evolve really quickly. I don't think it's Moore's law in terms of chips, but I think it's at a pace that will surprise people. Mm-hmm. Like the first bike that we raced at the Isle of Man, and then the most recent bike that we had in terms of performance, that was 2.5 years to improve that much, and it took gas motorcycles 47 years to do the same thing. So, you know, it's just getting to the point where it's equivalent or as good as gas, and I think it's going to be a lot better in a fairly short period of time.
Great. We'll bring Craig back for some questions in a few minutes, and thanks.
Great. Thank you.